General Vaxthora entered the vast chamber of the galactic throne, feeling every ache in his battle-worn frame. Fresh wounds still marked his reptilian scales, some barely sealed from recent treatment. He'd requested this urgent meeting 3 times before the Emperor finally granted it. Standing before Emperor Kalset's crystalline presence and the 12 council representatives of the galaxy's most powerful civilizations, Vaxthor understood his military career likely ended today. Still, he had to speak. The chamber stretched enormous and imposing, its pillars of compressed starlight supporting a ceiling that displayed the Empire's territories in real time. Thousands of star systems pulsed with soft light, each one under Imperial control, all except a tiny yellow star at the map's edge, barely visible among countless others. General Vaxthor, the Emperor's voice resonated throughout the space, emerging not from any mouth but through vibrations in his crystalline form. "You've interrupted our council proceedings to deliver an urgent warning. Proceed." Vaxthor triggered the holographic projector embedded in his armor. The air before him shimmered, transforming into a 3-dimensional combat scene. Council members shifted forward with casual interest. 3 months back, my fleet engaged human vessels in the disputed sector bordering their territory. Vaxthor started, his voice controlled though those familiar with him detected an underlying tremor. Our assignment was straightforward: execute a standard show of force, compel them to recognize Imperial sovereignty, then withdraw to base. It should have been completely routine. The hologram displayed a modest human exploration craft, barely matching the size of a standard galactic patrol ship. It appeared crude, with exposed welding seams and what looked like hand-painted markings on its exterior. "We neutralized their propulsion with a standard ion pulse," Vaxthor continued, then boarded to detain the crew. He paused, his clawed hand unconsciously touching a scar crossing his chest. 12 humans were aboard. We deployed 40 soldiers. 15 returned. A council member, a gaseous entity held within a containment suit, made a noise resembling escaping pressure. "Surely you jest, General. Humans barely possess spacefaring capability. They lack any significant military technology." "That was my assumption too," Vaxthor said softly. He changed the projection, now showing footage captured from a soldier's helmet camera. The council chamber grew silent as they observed. The recording revealed galactic troops advancing through a cramped human ship corridor, built for smaller beings. Then chaos erupted. A human male materialized, already wounded with dark fluid, not blood but some hydraulic substance spraying from where his arm had been severed. By every medical standard, shock and death should have claimed him. Instead, he charged ahead, discharging a primitive projectile weapon with his remaining hand, while screaming words the translator rendered as, "Come on then." Galactic soldiers struck him 3 additional times. As he collapsed, he hurled something. The explosive device detonated in that confined corridor, instantly eliminating 4 soldiers. "They never stop," Vaxthor stated, cutting through the stunned silence. Biological analysis afterward revealed they possess a substance called adrenaline that saturates their system during stress. It overrides pain, overrides rational thought. They continued fighting with injuries that would have killed any of us multiple times over. He displayed additional footage. A human female, cornered in a damaged ship section without weapons, had employed a fractured pipe to eliminate 2 soldiers in close combat before being overpowered. Another human had intentionally vented atmosphere in his own compartment, sacrificing himself and 6 galactic troops rather than yield. "This represents an anomaly," declared Council Member Zach, a tall being with too many joints. "You encountered desperate resistance from a trapped crew. This proves nothing about the entire species." "I thought identically," Vaxthor acknowledged. He accessed a data compilation, so I investigated them extensively. I devoted 3 months to studying everything available about human. The hologram shifted to display Earth, a blue and green world appearing deceptively tranquil. Then it magnified to reveal human cities, faces, daily life. "They evolved on a death world," Vaxthor explained. "Their planet's gravity exceeds what most of us consider standard by 30%. The atmosphere contains dangerous oxygen concentrations. Their world teems with predators, natural catastrophes, diseases. They didn't evolve as their world's apex predator, but as persistence hunters. Do you comprehend what that signifies?" The Emperor's crystalline form pulsed slowly, indicating his attention. "It means they lack superior strength or speed," Vaxthor clarified. "They evolved to pursue prey for days, even weeks, until exhaustion claimed their target. They never quit. It's embedded in their fundamental nature." Admiral Zorkath, who'd been standing silently at the chamber's rear, finally voiced his thoughts. He stood massive, easily 3 meters tall with thick armored plating covering his frame. "General Vaxthor, respectfully, You appear frightened of a species controlling precisely one star system. They lack faster-than-light technology. Their most powerful armaments are fusion-based. We possess planetary barriers that could withstand their complete nuclear stockpile. I am frightened of them, Baxthor stated plainly, and his admission rippled through the chamber. The general who'd conquered 40 worlds in the Emperor's service, who'd never withdrawn from combat, was openly admitting fear. He presented more information. They form pack connections, not only with their own kind but with other species. They'll sacrifice themselves for creatures they've known mere days. They domesticate carnivorous predators as household companions and grieve when these animals perish. They possess a concept they term spite, meaning they'll harm themselves if it means hurting an enemy. The hologram now depicted human history wars, devastating and destructive, covering their entire planet. In their last century, they've eliminated over 100 million of their own species through warfare. They created weapons capable of annihilating their own world, manufactured enough to end their civilization 10 times over. The sole reason they haven't deployed them is fear of retaliation. They call this mutually assured destruction, and they consider it a legitimate peacekeeping strategy. This only demonstrates they're violent and foolish, Zorkath dismissed. They nearly exterminated themselves. They clearly pose no threat to the Empire. They are violent, certainly, Baxthor agreed, but far from foolish. During that same century, they progressed from primitive aircraft to spacecraft. They advanced from basic computers to artificial intelligence. Their technological acceleration surpasses any species we've documented. And all of it, every advancement has been propelled by warfare. He displayed designs of human weaponry, kinetic kill systems, nuclear warheads, chemical agents, biological warfare, weapons engineered to obliterate cities, poison atmospheres, render worlds uninhabitable. They've developed weapons they consider too horrific to employ. Baxthor emphasized. Consider that. A species that's killed 100 million of its own has weapons they've collectively agreed are too terrible for warfare. I accessed their information networks, he continued. I examined their literature, entertainment, philosophy. Do you know what I discovered? The chamber fell completely silent. They have a principle. The only thing necessary for evil to triumph is for good people to do nothing. They believe in action against wrongdoing constitutes moral failure. They have another saying, give me liberty or give me death. They value freedom above their own survival. Baxthor's voice intensified, growing more urgent. They worship deities of war. They compose songs celebrating doomed final stands. Their greatest narratives feature small groups overcoming impossible odds. They educate their children that fighting overwhelming opposition is noble. They've made legends of soldiers who maintained positions until every single one perished. He displayed images from human culture, ancient warriors, modern soldiers, fictional champions, all fighting, all struggling, all refusing to yield. When we boarded that vessel, one human was already dying from our initial assault. We located him in the medical bay, connected to machines sustaining his life. Do you know what he did? He disconnected himself from life support, acquired a weapon and eliminated 3 more of my soldiers before his heart ceased. His final words, according to translation, were worth. Emperor Kal Seth finally spoke, his voice resonating through the chamber. General, your concern is acknowledged. However, we cannot permit a single species to remain outside imperial authority simply because they're violent. Many species resisted incorporation. All eventually submitted or were processed. This is different, Baxthor insisted. Every species we've conquered had a breaking threshold, a casualty level they wouldn't cross, a government capable of surrender, a will that could be fractured. Humans possess none of this. I've studied records of their wars, cities bombed to rubble, yet survivors continued fighting from the ruins. Soldiers cut off from all support fought as individuals, ships with no survival hope, and crews sang songs as they perished. He presented one final recording, saved for this moment. It showed a captured human soldier under interrogation. The human was young, barely into adulthood by their standards, with burns covering half her body and 3 missing fingers on her left hand. The interrogator asked why she'd fought when surrender would have preserved her life. The young human smiled, blood staining her teeth, and spoke words the translator struggled with. After processing, the translation appeared, because fuck you, that's why. They have no word for surrender in some languages, Baxthor stated. The closest translation is tactical withdrawal or temporary retreat, but not surrender. Not giving up. Admiral Zorkath laughed, a deep, booming sound. Then they're fools who don't recognize when they're beaten. All the better for us. Emperor, I volunteer to command the incorporation of the human system. It's resource-rich and strategically positioned. With your authorization, I'll bring these violent children into the Empire where they can be properly managed. Several council members voiced agreement. The human system held value and humanity clearly needed instruction in their place within the galactic order. Vaxthor felt his heart sinking. They weren't listening. They thought him overcautious, perhaps even cowardly. He could read it in their postures, hear it in their voice. "Emperor, I implore you," Vaxthor said. And the word implore from a general of his rank made several council members pause. "Leave humanity alone. Quarantine their system. Monitor them if necessary. Study them, but do not invade their world. They're not prepared to join the galactic community, and we're not prepared for what will happen if we attempt to force them." "Your counsel is noted, General," the Emperor said, his tone indicating the decision was already finalized. "However, we cannot display weakness by avoiding a single system because they're violent. Admiral Zorkath, you'll prepare a fleet. 500 ships should prove more than adequate. You'll proceed to Earth, deliver our standard terms and bring them into the Empire." Zorkath bowed, his armor plates grinding against each other. "It will be my honor, Emperor. I'll accomplish this within 2 of their months." Vaxthor made one final attempt. "There's something else I haven't mentioned yet. The humans have a concept in their philosophy and religion. They call death the last enemy. Not an enemy but the enemy, the ultimate opponent." He looked around the chamber, making eye contact with each council member. "They don't fear death, they've declared war on it. They combat diseases that should be incurable. They've invented machines to restart stopped hearts. They freeze their deceased, hoping future technology will revive them. They place their elderly in medical facilities where machines keep them alive long past when nature would have claimed them. And they do this not from fear of death, but because they refuse to accept it." Vaxthor's voice dropped to barely above a whisper, yet in the silent chamber, everyone heard him perfectly. "What do you think beings who've declared war on death itself will do when we threaten them with it?" The Emperor considered this for a long moment. Then his crystalline form pulsed with what might have been amusement. "Then we shall teach them that some wars cannot be won. This audience is concluded. Admiral Zorkath, begin your preparations. General Vaxthor, you are dismissed." As the chamber began emptying, Vaxthor stood frozen momentarily. He had failed. He looked up at the galaxy map on the ceiling, at that small yellow star, and felt a chill run through his body. Admiral Zorkath approached him, placing a heavy hand on Vaxthor's shoulder. "Don't feel bad, old friend. You've grown cautious in your age. It happens to all warriors eventually. I'll show you how easily these humans can be brought to heel." Vaxthor looked at the Admiral, at his confident posture, his assured smile. "I hope you're right," he said quietly. "For all our sakes, I truly hope you're right." But he didn't believe it. He'd looked into human eyes as they died. He'd seen something there that terrified him more than any weapon or army. An absolute, unshakable conviction that they would never stop fighting. Not while a single human still drew breath. As he departed the chamber, Vaxthor transmitted an encrypted message to his home world, to his mate and offspring. A simple instruction: begin stockpiling supplies and prepare defensive positions. The Empire was about to learn a lesson it would never forget, and Vaxthor suspected that by the time that lesson was learned, the galaxy would be a very different place. Above the chamber, the map of the galaxy glowed peacefully, thousands of systems under the throne's control. But that small yellow star at the edge seemed, to Vaxthor's eyes, to pulse with a light of its own, a warning light that no one else could see. Humanity had been noticed, and nothing would ever be the same again. The warning arrived 6 months after the Emperor granted his approval. Every telescope on Earth, every satellite, every deep space monitoring station detected them simultaneously. 500 ships dropping out of faster-than-light travel at the solar system's edge near Neptune's orbit. Admiral Yuki Tanaka was in her quarters aboard the UED Defiance reviewing supply manifests, the mundane but essential work of maintaining a defense fleet operational. When the alert pierced the silence, her tablet immediately displayed the emergency bulletin: "All hands to battle station. This is not a drill. Unknown fleet detected. Count, 500+ vessels. Classification, hostile." Yuki was moving before she finished reading. She pulled on her uniform jacket while running, fingers working buttons through muscle memory. By the time she reached the bridge, her crew was already at their stations. The main view screen showed the alien fleet, enhanced by long-range sensors. "Mother of God," her tactical officer whispered. The fleet was massive, each ship easily doubled the size of humanity's largest carrier. They moved in perfect formation, a display of power and coordination that humanity's scattered defense forces could never match. "Communications, any attempts to contact us?" Yuki asked, settling into her command chair. "Nothing yet, Admiral. They're just positioned there, waiting." "Power levels. Weapons are hot, but not charging. They want us to see them." Yuki understood. This was intimidation, Show overwhelming force. Make the enemy realize resistance is futile. Accept surrender without firing a shot. It was a tactic as ancient as warfare itself. Get me a channel to Earth Command, she ordered. And someone wake up the Secretary General. Tell them we have visitors. The next hour was chaos. Every government on Earth screamed for information. The civilian population panicked. Stock markets crashed. Religious leaders declared at the end times. Riots erupted in a dozen major cities, as people either tried to flee or decided to loot while they could. But the military knew what to do. They had planned for this. Hoped it would never happen but planned nonetheless. Humanity had known since they first left Earth that they weren't alone in the universe. The discovery of ruins on Mars had proven that ancient cities, long dead, left by a civilization that had reached the stars and then vanished. Humanity had looked at those ruins and asked themselves a question. What happens when we meet whoever did this? What if they're hostile? So they had prepared. While politicians talked about peace and exploration, the military built weapons. While scientists studied the ruins, engineers designed ships that could fight. Earth's defense fleet was small, only 47 ships, but every single one had been built with one purpose: to make anyone who attacked humanity pay a terrible price. Admiral Tanaka watched her tactical display as the human fleet assembled. Ships from 12 different nations, all under her command by emergency protocol. Chinese destroyers, American carriers, Russian missile cruisers, European defense platforms, all moving into defensive positions around Earth and the inner colonies. The alien fleet waited for 6 hours. Then finally they transmitted. The signal came on all frequencies, impossible to block. It was audio only, which surprised Yuki. The voice was clearly artificial, a translation program. Attention, primitive species. You are hereby notified that your system falls under the jurisdiction of the Galactic Empire. You will cease all military activities and prepare to receive Imperial representatives. Any resistance will be met with appropriate force. You have one of your planetary rotations to comply. This is your only warning. The channel closed. Yuki sat in her chair, her face calm, her mind raced. She looked at her crew, saw their fear, their anger, their determination. Then she stood. Communications, open a channel, all frequencies. I want them to hear this clearly. Her communications officer worked quickly, then nodded. Channel open, Admiral, they're definitely receiving. Yuki took a breath and spoke clearly into the microphone. Unknown fleet. This is Admiral Yuki Tanaka of the United Earth Defense Force. You have entered our system without permission. You have threatened our people. You have one chance to leave peacefully. Turn your ships around and go. If you don't, you will regret it. This is your only warning. She cut the channel before they could respond. Her tactical officer stared at her. Admiral, did we just threaten a fleet of 500 with our 47 ships? Yes, Yuki said calmly. And now we prepare. If they're smart, they'll leave. If they're not, we show them why Earth is still free. On the bridge of the Imperial flagship, Admiral Zerketh listened to the human transmission and laughed. The sound echoed through the command center, his crew joining. Such arrogance from such a primitive species, he said, still chuckling. They threaten us. This will at least be entertaining. His second in command, a careful officer named Richtall, wasn't laughing. Sir, perhaps we should take their warning seriously. General Vex Thor's report suggested. General Vex Thor is an old warrior who has lost his nerve, Zorkath interrupted. Look at them. 47 ships against our 500. Their largest vessel would fit inside our cargo bay. What exactly do you think they can do to us? Richtall had no answer to that. Target their outer colony, Zorkath ordered. The one on the moon they call Titan. Destroy it. Show them what resistance costs. Sir, there are civilians there. Then they should evacuate. We're not barbarians. Give them 1 hour. The human colony on Titan received the warning with 58 minutes to spare. The colony administrator, a woman named Sarah Chen, immediately ordered evacuation. 3,000 miners and their families rushed to the transport ships. But Sarah stayed behind with a crew of 20 volunteers, engineers, explosives experts, and one very angry mining foreman named Duke Morrison, who'd worked on Titan for 15 years. They want our colony, Duke growled, his thick accent making the translator work hard. Fine, let them have it, but I'll be damned if we leave them anything useful. They worked fast. Titan was a mining colony, which meant it had explosives, lots of explosives. They rigged every building, every tunnel, every piece of equipment. Then they uploaded a virus into the automated systems that would cause a catastrophic failure in the methane processing plant. Sarah stood in the control room, watching the countdown. The alien ships were in orbit now, their weapons charging. She could see them on the monitors, huge and terrible. Everyone out, she ordered. Get to the last transport. What about you, Administrator? One of the engineers asked. Someone needs to push the button, Sarah said calmly. I'm the colony administrator. This is my responsibility. Now go. They went, reluctant but understanding. Duke was the last to leave, pausing at the door. You're a stubborn woman, Sarah Chen. I'm a human, Duke Morrison. We're all stubborn now. Get out of here. Duke left. Sarah waited until she received confirmation that the transport was clear, then activated the detonation sequence. She had 30 seconds. She used 25 of them to record a message. To whoever finds this Titan was our home. You took it from us. I hope you choke on it. Then she pushed the final button, and the world turned white. The explosion was spectacular. The methane processing plant went first, a fireball that lit up the dark moon. Then the charges in the mines detonated in sequence, and the entire colony collapsed into the tunnels below. As a final touch, Sarah had reprogrammed the orbital docking platform to decouple from its support. The massive structure, weighing thousands of tons, fell toward Titan's surface in the low gravity, but it didn't fall straight down. Sarah had fired its positioning thrusters one last time, giving it lateral momentum. It fell like a spear directly into the path of the nearest Imperial destroyer. The galactic ship tried to evade, but it was too close and the platform too large. Metal screamed against metal. The platform tore through the destroyer's shields and ripped a hole in its hull. Atmosphere vented, fires erupted, and the ship began to lift. Admiral Zorkath watched in disbelief as one of his ships was crippled by a piece of debris. No, not debris. The humans had weaponized their own infrastructure. Status on the destroyer, he demanded. Heavy damage, sir. 40% casualties. It will need to withdraw for repair. Zorkath felt a flash of anger. One ship damaged, and they hadn't even engaged the enemy fleet yet. He thought of General Vaxthor's warnings and pushed them aside. This was a lucky shot, nothing more. Begin the assault, he ordered. Destroy their defense fleet. Show them the price of resistance. The Imperial fleet moved forward, engines burning bright in the darkness of space. The human fleet waited near Mars, positioned between the invaders and Earth. Admiral Tanaka watched them come. Her hands were steady on the armrests of her chair. She'd fought in wars before, back when nations still fought each other for resources and territory. She'd seen death. She'd ordered people to die. But this was different. This was for all of humanity. All ships, weapons free. She ordered. Launch all drones, activate the mines and get me a firing solution on their flagship. Her crew moved with practiced efficiency. The battle began. The humans struck first, which surprised the Imperial fleet. Hundreds of autonomous drones, each no larger than a fighter craft, swarmed toward the galactic ships. They were fast and maneuverable, and they weren't trying to fight. They were trying to ram. Evasive action. Commanders across the Imperial fleet shouted as the drones closed in. Point defense weapons fired, destroying dozens of drones. But there were too many. They struck like bullets, their nuclear reactors rigged to overload on impact. 3 Imperial frigates died in the first 30 seconds, overwhelmed by suicide attack. What kind of species weaponizes their own technology like this? Richtall shouted, disbelief clear in his voice. A desperate one, Zorkath replied, but he was beginning to feel something he hadn't felt in many years: doubt. The human ships opened fire now. Their weapons were primitive, railguns and missiles mostly, but they used them with devastating effectiveness. They didn't try to fight ship to ship. Instead, they launched missiles on ballistic trajectories, then retreated, forcing the Imperial ships to chase them into prepared kill zone. The space between Mars and Earth was full of mines, thousands of them left dormant until now. As the Imperial fleet pursued the retreating humans, the mines activated. More ships died, blown apart by weapons that cost almost nothing to build, but everything to defend against. Admiral Tanaka stood on her bridge, watching the tactical display. They were losing. Of course they were losing. You couldn't win a battle when outnumbered 10-1, but winning wasn't the objective. Captain Morrison, she said into her communicator, speaking to the commander of the UED Retribution. You're clear to execute Protocol Omega. Understood, Admiral, came the reply. It's been an honor serving with you. The honor was mine, Captain. Give them hell. The Retribution was one of humanity's oldest ships, a carrier that had seen better days. Its reactor had been damaged in the opening exchange, and it was venting atmosphere. By all rights, it should have withdrawn. Instead, it turned toward the Imperial flagship and accelerated. Sir, one of their carriers is on a collision course, a sensor operator shouted on Zorkath's bridge. Destroy it, Zorkath ordered. Weapons fire lanced out, striking the Retribution repeatedly. Its shields failed, armor burned away, entire sections of the ship were torn open to space. But it didn't stop. It couldn't stop. Its crew was dead, its weapons destroyed, its systems failing, but its engines still worked, and Captain Morrison had locked the controls. The Retribution struck the Imperial flagship at a significant fraction of the speed of light. The resulting explosion could be seen from Earth, a new star that burned for 3 seconds, then faded. When the light cleared, the Imperial flagship was gone. So was the Retribution. So were 2 other Imperial ships that had been too close to the blast. Admiral Zorkath survived, barely. He'd been thrown across his bridge by the impact, his command chair crushing one of his legs. Smoke filled the air. Emergency lights flashed. "Status," he shouted, coughing. "Flagship destroyed, sir. You're on the secondary command ship. We pulled you from the wreckage." Zorkath tried to stand and failed. His leg was broken, maybe worse. "The battle? We're winning, sir. The human fleet is down to 12 ships, but our losses are significant. 47 ships destroyed or disabled. 47 ships, the same number the humans had started with. They traded 1 for 1 against an enemy that should have crushed them. What are the humans doing?" Zorkath asked. "The remaining ships are retreating toward Earth, still fighting but falling back." Zorkath hauled himself up using a console. His second-in-command tried to help, but he waved them away. He looked at the tactical display, at the 12 remaining human ships, and made his decision. "Pursue them, destroy them all. I want every human ship turned to debris, and then we take their planet." The battle raged for 6 more hours. One by one the human ships fell. They fought with everything they had, expending every weapon, every missile, every drone. When the UED Defiance's weapons were empty, Admiral Tanaka gave her final order. "All hands, this is the Admiral. Abandon get to the escape pods." That's a direct order. Her crew hesitated. She had to repeat herself 3 times before they obeyed. She watched them go, each pod launching toward Earth, hoping they'd make it through the battle. When the last pod was away, she sat alone on her bridge. The ship was dying around her, systems failing one by one. She opened a communication channel to the Imperial fleet. "This is Admiral Yuki Tanaka. You wanted to see what humans do when threatened. I hope you're paying attention. You've won this battle, but you haven't won the war. Earth is still free, and while a single human still breathes, it will remain free. We're coming for you, all of you, and we will not stop. We will never stop." Then she activated the reactor overload, and sent her ship directly into the nearest Imperial cruiser. The explosion added one more light to the darkness. When the battle ended, the Imperial fleet had lost 89 ships. The human defense fleet was gone, completely destroyed. Not a single human warship remained. Zorkath sat in the medical bay, his leg in a regeneration field, and tried to understand what had happened. He had won. Earth's defenses were shattered. The path to the planet was clear, but he'd lost 89 ships, nearly a fifth of his fleet, against an enemy that should have been defeated in minutes. He opened his communicator and for the first time since the battle began, thought about General Vaxthor's warnings. A message was waiting for him, sent during the battle but marked low priority by the automated systems. It was from one of the ships that had boarded a damaged human vessel. The message was brief, with an attached recording. It showed human soldiers trapped in a section of their ship that was venting atmosphere. They knew they were going to die. The recording had audio. They were singing. Zorkath listened to the song, the translator struggling with the word. It was something about standing together, about never surrendering, about dying free rather than living in chains. The humans sang until the air ran out and then they died. Zorkath closed the message and looked at the tactical display. Earth was there, waiting. Billions of humans, and if the fleet was any indication, every single one of them ready to die rather than submit. He thought about turning back. He genuinely considered it. But the Emperor was watching. The Council was waiting for his report, and he'd come too far to retreat now. "Prepare for orbital bombardment," he ordered. "We take their planet." But as the fleet moved toward Earth, Admiral Zorkath made a note in his personal log. A single sentence that he would never share with anyone. General Vaxthor was right. The bombardment of Earth began 3 days after the space battle. Admiral Zorkath had taken those days to reorganize his fleet, repair what could be repaired, and prepare for what he expected would be the final phase of conquest. He'd sent messages to the planet's surface, offering terms of surrender. He'd broadcast promises of fair treatment, of integration into the Galactic Empire, of the benefits that came with joining a civilization spanning thousands of worlds. Every message was ignored. Instead, Earth broadcast its own message. It came from someone who called himself the Secretary General of the United Nations, speaking on behalf of all humanity. The message was simple and direct. We reject your authority. We reject your empire. We reject your term. Earth is ours, and will remain ours. If you want it, come and take it. We'll be waiting. So Zorkath gave the order, and the bombardment began. The Imperial fleet focused on military targets first: orbital defense platforms, ground-based missile silos, radar installations, command centers. Beams of concentrated energy lanced down from the sky, and explosions bloomed across every continent. Cities burned, mountains were leveled, entire military bases simply ceased to exist. And humanity disappeared. It took Zorkath 3 days to realize what was happening. The satellites that humans had positioned around their planet went dark, self-destructed to deny the Imperial's intelligence. Without them, orbital bombardment became less precise. They had to rely on their own sensors, their own intelligence, and they found nothing. The human military had gone underground, not just into bunkers, but deep underground, into facilities that had been prepared for nuclear war during humanity's own conflicts. Command centers buried under mountains, factories hidden in old mines, entire populations relocated to subterranean shelters that could sustain them for months, even years. They planned for this, Richtel said, studying the sensor data. These bunkers are old, some of them decades old. They've been preparing for an invasion for generations. Then we dig them out, Zorkath replied. Prepare ground forces. We'll occupy the major population centers and force them to surrender. The first landing occurred near what had been New York City. 2,000 galactic soldiers, equipped with the best weapons the Empire could provide, descended in dropships. They expected resistance. They were ready for it. What they found was a ghost town. The city was empty. Buildings stood intact but abandoned. Cars sat in the streets, their engines cold. The soldiers moved through the streets in formation, weapons ready. But there was no one to fight. "Where are they?" one soldier muttered, his question echoing through every squad. They found out after dark. The attacks came from everywhere and nowhere. A sniper shot from a building, killing an officer. By the time soldiers returned fire, the sniper was gone. An improvised explosive device detonated under a patrol, killing 6 soldiers. Chemical weapons forbidden by galactic law were deployed in subway tunnels, forcing soldiers to abandon those positions. And every night, the humans broadcast music, loud, defiant music that echoed through the empty street. The lyrics differed, but the message was always the same: we're still here, we're still fighting, and we will never stop. The galactic soldiers began to hate the music. After 2 weeks of occupation, the ground forces had secured exactly 3 city blocks. They'd lost 300 soldiers, and they hadn't seen a single living human, except for brief moments before those humans killed someone and vanished. "This is insane," a squad leader reported to his commander. "They're not fighting like soldiers. There's no front line, no army to engage. They're in the walls, under the streets, in the buildings. We blow up a structure, and they attack from somewhere else." Zorkath ordered more troops deployed. 5,000 soldiers became 10,000, then 20,000. The numbers didn't matter. The result was the same. The humans were using tactics refined over thousands of years of warfare against each other. Guerrilla warfare, asymmetric warfare, terrorism, some would call it. But the humans called it resistance. In the ruins of Beijing, a galactic patrol found a weapons cache hidden in a school. When they investigated, the entire building exploded. 40 soldiers died, and the humans responsible were never found. In what had been London, the occupation forces tried to establish a forward base in a government building. They spent 3 days fortifying it, installing shields and sensors. On the 4th day, the humans tunneled under it and flooded the basement with poisonous gas. In Moscow, the soldiers found themselves under attack from the civilians they were trying to protect. Elderly humans threw homemade explosives from windows. Children lured patrols into ambushes. No one was safe. No one could be trusted. "They don't have rules," one traumatized soldier told the medic treating his wounds. "No rules of war, no limits. They use weapons we banned centuries ago. They hide among their own civilians. They booby-trap their dead. What kind of species does this?" The medic had no answer, but the question spread through the ranks, and morale began to decline. 3 months into the occupation, Admiral Zorkath received a communication from a captured human. The soldiers had found her in the ruins of a hospital, wounded and unable to escape. She was young, barely an adult by human standards, with burns covering most of her body. The interrogator asked her why she'd fought when she could have surrendered and lived. He asked if she understood that resistance was futile, that humanity had already lost. The girl looked directly into the camera, her eyes clear despite her pain, and spoke words that would haunt Zorkath for the rest of his life. "You should have listened to your general," she said. "We've been killing each other for 10,000 years. We know every way there is to make someone suffer, every tactic, every strategy, and we've been practicing on each other, learning, improving, waiting. You think this is war? You have no idea what war is, but you're going to learn." She died an hour later from her injuries, refusing medical treatment, refusing to answer any more questions. Zorkath ordered her last words classified, but they'd already spread through the fleet. The soldiers talked, and fear began to grow. Then the humans changed tactic. It started with the supply lines. Ships bringing supplies from the outer system began disappearing, not destroyed, not damaged, just gone. The Imperial fleet sent search parties, and what they found made no sense. The supply ships were adrift, their crews dead, but there was no sign of attack, no damage to the ships. Medical examination revealed the crews had been exposed to biological agents, diseases that killed within hours. Where did they get biological weapons? Zorkath demanded. They had no space fleet. We destroyed it. Riktal pulled up intelligence reports, his hands shaking slightly. "Sir, we didn't destroy it. We destroyed what they showed us. The ships they let us see. They had others hidden in the asteroid belt, in the moons of Jupiter, in deep space, and they've been building more. More. That's impossible. We've been watching this system for months. We would have detected construction. They built them inside asteroids, sir, hollowed them out, and assembled the ships inside. By the time our sensors detected them, they were already operational." Zorkath felt something cold settle in his stomach. "How many ships? Unknown. We've confirmed at least 30 new human warships, but there could be more. They have automated construction facilities scattered throughout the system, all hidden, all producing weapons. 30 ships shouldn't matter." Zorkath still had over 400 vessels under his command, but these new human ships were different from the ones they'd destroyed in the first battle. These ships had been built specifically to fight galactic vessels, using technology captured from disabled Imperial ships. They'd reverse-engineered shield generators, they'd copied weapon systems. They'd learned. The first engagement with the new human fleet occurred near Jupiter. A galactic supply convoy escorted by 6 warships was ambushed by 8 human vessels. The battle lasted 12 minutes. The human ships won, not through superior technology or firepower but through tactics the Galactic Navy had never encountered. They used radiation from Jupiter to mask their approach. They fired missiles on ballistic trajectories, making them look like space debris until they activated at close range. They concentrated fire on single targets, destroying ships one at a time instead of spreading their attacks. And when one human ship was disabled, its crew set the reactor to overload and rammed the nearest Imperial vessel. The Galactics lost all 6 escorts and 3 supply ships. The humans lost 2 vessels. And once again the recording of the human crew's last moments was recovered. They had been singing. Zorkath watched the footage and felt rage building inside him. What is the song? What are they always singing? The translator provided the lyrics. It was a different song this time, but the theme was the same, something about standing together against impossible odds, about never surrendering, about choosing death over submission. "They treat dying like it's glorious," Zorkath said quietly, "like it's an honor. How do you fight an enemy that wants to die for their cause? You don't," a voice said from behind him. Zorkath turned to see General Vax Thor standing in the doorway of his office. The old general had been assigned as an advisor after Zorkath's initial reports had reached the Emperor. "General," Zorkath said, keeping his voice neutral. "I didn't expect you, no one ever does," Vax Thor replied. He moved into the room, his movements showing his age and scars. "I came because the Emperor is concerned. You've been here 3 months, and you haven't secured the planet. The planet is a death trap. Every building, every street, every square meter could hide an enemy. My soldiers are dying in 1s and 2s, killed by an enemy they never see. I warned you," Vax Thor said without anger. "I told the Council what humanity was, but no one listened. So you came here to say you were right. To gloat. I came to help you minimize the casualties, because this war is lost, Admiral. You just don't know it yet." Zorkath felt his temper flare. "We control the orbitals. We have 400 ships. They have scattered resistance fighters and maybe 30 ships. How have we lost?" Vax Thor activated a holographic display showing the solar system. "In the 3 months you've been here, how many human military personnel have you killed?" "Estimated 6,000. "And how many soldiers have you lost?" Zorkath hesitated. 4,000. "But that number includes non-combat casualties. So you've lost 2/3 as many troops as you've killed," fighting an enemy with no space fleet, no orbital defenses, and no unified command structure. Vaxthor zoomed the display to show Earth. You control 3 cities, or rather small parts of 3 cities. The rest of the planet is still in human hands. Their industrial capacity is largely intact because they built it underground. Their population is mostly alive because they evacuated before you arrived. And every day you stay here, they grow stronger while you grow weaker. Then what do you suggest? Leave now. Tell the Emperor that Earth cannot be conquered, or at least not without an effort that would cripple the Empire. Quarantine the system and move on. I can't do that. The Emperor would see it as cowardice. Then you'll die here, Vaxthor said simply. You and every soldier under your command. Because humans don't surrender, and they don't forgive. They'll fight you for years, decades, generations. Zorkath wanted to argue, but the numbers didn't lie. In 3 months he'd lost more troops than in any campaign in his career, and he had nothing to show for it, except ruined cities and traumatized soldiers. How long, he asked quietly. How long could we hold out if we committed to total war? Vaxthor considered the question seriously. Based on current casualty rates and accounting for human learning curve, 2 years, maybe 3 before your fleet is too damaged to maintain orbital control. After that the surviving humans would reclaim their planet, repair their industry, and build a fleet large enough to threaten imperial space. You're saying we can't win. I'm saying you've already lost. The only question is how many more of your soldiers you send to die before you accept it. Zorkath stood and walked to the window. Outside he could see Earth below, blue and green and beautiful. Somewhere down there humans were preparing their next attack. Somewhere in the asteroid belt, more ships were being built. And somewhere in the darkness between the stars, General Vaxthor's words were echoing with a truth he didn't want to accept. He had come to conquer humanity. Instead, humanity was teaching him what defeat felt like. A message appeared on his terminal. Another patrol had gone missing, this time in the ruins of Tokyo. 15 soldiers, last seen entering a subway station. No bodies found, no survivors. And according to reports, someone had been playing music from speakers hidden in the tunnels. A human song about rising from the ashes, about never giving up, about standing against the darkness. Zorkath closed his eyes and made a decision. Contact the fleet. Order all ground forces to consolidate their positions. We're shifting to a defensive posture. A wise choice. Vaxthor. I'm not retreating, Zorkath said sharply. Not yet, but I'm going to request reinforcements from the Emperor. If we're going to hold this system, we need more ships, more soldiers. Vaxthor's expression suggested he knew that reinforcements wouldn't change anything, but he said nothing. Some lessons had to be learned through experience. On Earth in a bunker 3 kilometers below the Rocky Mountains, Elena Vasquez read the intelligence report about the Galactic forces consolidating. She was the commander of the North American Resistance, a former Special Forces operator who'd been preparing for this fight her entire career. They're getting scared, one of her lieutenants said. Good, Elena replied. Scared soldiers make mistakes, and when they make mistakes we kill them. Pass the word to all cells, increase the pressure. Hit them every night, every day, give them no rest, let them feel what it's like to be hunted. The message went out through encrypted channels to resistance cells across the planet. In Paris, in Cairo, in Mumbai, in every city where the Galactics had landed. Humans prepared their weapons and planned their attacks. Above, Admiral Zorkath waited for reinforcements that would take months to arrive. Below, humanity sharpened their knives and sang their songs of defiance. The war had just begun, and already the Galactics were learning a lesson that would echo across the stars. Humanity didn't fight to win, they fought because they refused to lose. And there was a difference. A critical difference that would cost the Empire more than they could possibly imagine. In his private quarters, Zorkath made an entry in his personal log. Day 90 of the occupation. Casualties continue to mount, morale is declining. The humans show no signs of surrender. I begin to understand what General Vaxthor meant when he said they declared war on death itself. They don't fear dying. They fear living under our rule more than they fear their own extinction. How do you defeat an enemy like that? He had no answer, and deep down in a place he'd never admit to anyone, he suspected there was no answer. The grind would continue, and humanity would make them pay for every meter of ground, every day of occupation, every life taken. And somewhere in the darkness, a human teenager with burns across half her body had spoken a truth that would haunt the Galactic Empire for generations. You have no idea what war is, but you're going to learn. 1 year after the invasion began, something changed. Admiral Zorkath felt it before he saw it. A tension among his officers that hadn't been there before. The daily casualty reports had become routine, expected. The endless grind of occupation had settled into a grim normality. But on the morning that marked the one-year anniversary, something was different. The first sign came from deep space sensors. A galactic listening post on the edge of the solar system simply stopped transmitting. No distress call, no warning. One moment it was there, the next it was silent. Could be equipment failure, Richter suggested, when the report reached the command deck. Send a ship to investigate, Zorkath ordered, but he knew, deep in his bones, that it wasn't equipment failure. The ship never returned. 2 hours later, every sensor in the solar system detected the same thing simultaneously, faster than light signatures. Dozens of them, appearing throughout human space, not arriving from outside the system, but emerging from within. That's impossible, a sensor operator said, his voice shaking. FTL drives don't work that deep in a gravity well. The stellar mass interferes with the dimensional equation. Tell that to the humans, Zorkath said quietly, watching the tactical display as red icons multiplied across the screen. The human fleet had been building in secret for a year, hidden in the asteroid belt, assembled in the moons of Jupiter and Saturn, constructed inside hollowed-out asteroids that masked their energy signatures. And they hadn't just been building ships, they'd been reverse engineering galactic technology, learning, improving, adapting. The new human fleet consisted of 96 ships. They were smaller than Imperial vessels, but faster, more maneuverable, and they were equipped with weapons that made Zorkath's blood run cold. The first human ship to open fire did so from within the atmosphere of Jupiter. It rose from the gas giant's clouds like a predator emerging from deep water, already at combat speed, and fired a weapon the Galactics had never seen before. The projectile was a rod of depleted uranium accelerated to a significant fraction of light speed by magnetic coils running the length of the ship. It had no explosive, no warhead. It didn't need one. At that velocity, simple kinetic energy was enough. The rod struck a galactic battlecruiser and punched clean through it, entering through the bow and exiting through the stern. The ship didn't explode. It simply broke apart. Structural integrity destroyed, reactors failing, atmosphere venting. Evasive action, Zorkath shouted. But his fleet wasn't designed for this kind of combat. Imperial doctrine relied on shields and armor to absorb damage while returning fire with energy weapons. But the human kinetic weapons hit too hard, too fast. Shields meant to stop energy beams were useless against solid projectiles moving at relativistic speeds. The battle that followed was chaos. The human ships didn't fight like the vessels Zorkath had destroyed a year ago. They fought like pack hunters coordinating attacks, focusing fire, exploiting every weakness in Imperial defenses. And they weren't fighting alone. From Earth's surface, from the moon, from Mars and the asteroid belt, missiles launched thousands of them. Most were simple kinetic kill vehicles, dumb weapons with minimal guidance. But there were thousands of them and they forced the galactic fleet to split their attention. Sir, we're being overwhelmed, Richter reported. 30 ships have taken critical damage. The humans are targeting our larger vessels specifically. Zorkath watched as another battlecruiser died, this one to a swarm of human fighters that had somehow gotten past the point defenses. The fighters were piloted, not drone. He could see them on the tactical display, tiny signatures that moved with purpose and precision. And then they started ramming. One by one, when their weapons were exhausted or when they saw an opportunity, the human pilots simply drove their fighters into galactic ships. They aimed for command decks, for reactor compartments, for weapons arrays. And they didn't hesitate. They're insane, a weapons officer whispered. No, Zorkath said, his voice hollow. They're committed. There's a difference. The battle raged for 8 hours. When it finally ended, the human fleet withdrew, but not before delivering a message. It was broadcast on all frequencies in perfect galactic standard, and it came from a human woman whose face appeared on every screen in the Imperial fleet. She was older than most of the soldiers they'd encountered, with gray hair and scars that suggested she'd been fighting for a long time. She wore a uniform that marked her as a ship captain, and her eyes were cold. I am Captain Sarah Chen, she said. 1 year ago you destroyed my home on Titan. You killed my friends, my colleagues, people I loved. I survived. And I've spent the last year building the ship I'm standing on. I named it Retribution, after the ship that rammed your flagship in the first battle. She paused, her expression hardening. You came to our home and you brought war. You thought we'd surrender, that we'd accept your rule. You were wrong. We don't surrender. We don't forget. And we don't forgive. The display behind her changed to show a star map. The Galactic Empire. thousands of systems connected by trade routes and supply lines, and it showed red markers appearing on several of those systems. While you've been occupying Earth, we've been learning about you, Captain Chen continued. We know where your homeworlds are. We know where your colonies are located. We know your supply routes, your infrastructure, your weaknesses, and we've sent ships to all of them. Zorkath felt his heart stop. What? You brought total war to our doorstep, Chen said. Now we return the favor. This isn't revenge. This is justice. This is proportional response. You taught us what you fear most, and now we'll use it against you. The transmission ended. For a moment the command deck was silent. Then the communications officer spoke, his voice shaking. Sir, we're receiving reports from across Imperial space. Human ships have attacked the Catheran homeworld, the Zaxian colonies, the supply depot at Riel 7. They're hitting targets throughout the Empire. How many ships? Zorkath demanded. Unknown, sir. At least 20 confirmed sighting, but the attacks are coordinated across dozens of light years. They must have been planning this for months. Zorkath pulled up the tactical display, expanding it to show the entire region. The red markers spread across the map like a disease, each one representing a human attack. They weren't trying to conquer, they were destroying infrastructure, targeting civilian populations, using the same tactics the Empire had used against Earth. And they were using weapons that violated every galactic convention on warfare. The report from the Catheran homeworld made Zorkath physically ill. The human ships had deployed a biological weapon, a modified virus designed to target Catheran physiologies specifically. Millions were sick, hospitals overwhelmed. The casualty projections were catastrophic. On the Zaxian colonies, the humans had used nuclear weapons, something the Empire hadn't seen in warfare for centuries. Entire cities were gone, the land poisoned for generations. At Riel 7, a major supply depot that fed a dozen Imperial fleets, the humans had done something even worse. They'd crashed an asteroid into the orbital station at relativistic speed. The debris field had destroyed the station and rained down on the planet below, causing impacts equivalent to hundreds of nuclear weapons. They're animals, Richtal said, reading the reports. This is barbaric. This violates every law of civilized warfare. We bombed their cities from orbit, Zorkath reminded him quietly. We killed their civilians. We invaded their home. Did you think they'd respond with honor and restraint? But there are rules. There are no rules in total war, Zorkath interrupted. We taught them that. Now they're teaching us. A priority message arrived from the Galactic Throne. Zorkath opened it with shaking hand. It was short and direct. Admiral Zorkath, you are hereby ordered to withdraw all forces from the human system immediately. Return to the capital for debriefing. This campaign is suspended pending review. Suspended. Not ended. Suspended. As if they might come back. As if this was just a temporary setback. Zorkath wanted to laugh, but the sound would have been too bitter. Prepare the fleet for withdrawal, he ordered. All ground forces are to be evacuated within 48 hours. Anything we can't take, we destroy. But even as he gave the orders, he knew it was too late. The humans had learned too much, grown too strong. They'd tasted galactic blood, and they liked it. The evacuation was a nightmare. Human resistance forces attacked every landing zone, every They didn't try to stop the evacuation, but they made it as costly as possible. Soldiers died trying to reach their ships. Equipment had to be abandoned, and through it all the humans played their music, their songs of victory and defiance. As the last transport lifted off from Earth, carrying the survivors of the occupation force, someone detonated a series of charges along the coastline where the Galactics had established their main base. The explosion was shaped, directed, and it threw tons of debris into the path of the ascending ships. 3 transports were destroyed. 700 soldiers died within sight of escape. Admiral Zorkath watched from orbit as the last of his ground forces left Earth's surface. Out of 20,000 soldiers who'd landed, fewer than 12,000 were leaving. The rest were dead, buried in the rubble of human cities or simply missing. And Earth was still free. The Imperial fleet began its withdrawal from the solar system, a ragged formation of damaged ships and exhausted crews. They left behind the wreckage of over 150 vessels, the graves of tens of thousands of soldiers, and a warning that would echo through the galaxy. As they reached the edge of the system, preparing to jump to faster than light, one final message came from Earth. It was audio only, a human voice speaking calmly and clearly. You came to our home and you learned what we're capable of. We didn't want this war, but you gave us no choice. Now we know where you live, we know how you fight, we know how you die. Leave us alone, and we'll leave you alone. But if you ever return, if you ever threaten Earth again, we will burn your empire to ashes. This is not a threat, this is a promise. The transmission ended. Zorkath sat in his command chair, staring at the view screen as the human system disappeared behind them. He thought about the soldiers he'd lost, the ships that would never return, the civilians on Imperial worlds who were dying from human weapons even now. And he thought about General Vax Thor's warning, delivered in the council chamber so long ago: leave humanity alone. They should have listened. As the fleet jumped to FTL, leaving the solar system behind, Zorkath received one more message. It was from General Vax Thor, and it contained only a single sentence. Welcome back, Admiral. We need to talk about what comes next, because the war isn't over. It's only just begun. Humanity had defeated the invasion, but they'd also learned something dangerous. They'd learned that they could fight the Empire and win. They'd learned that the great and powerful galactic civilization wasn't invincible, and they'd learned where the Empire's worlds were located. In bunkers across Earth, in hidden shipyards throughout the solar system, humanity was already planning their next move. They'd won the defensive war. Now they were preparing for the offensive one. Captain Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of her ship, the Retribution, and looked at the star maps. So many worlds, so many targets. The Empire had hurt them, killed millions, destroyed cities. And humanity was going to make them pay for every single death. Captain, her tactical officer said, we have confirmation. All strike teams have reported successful attacks and are withdrawing. Good, Sarah said. How many Imperial worlds did we hit? 37, ma'am. The weapons were deployed as planned. Casualty estimates are still coming in, but preliminary numbers suggest millions of Imperial citizens affected. Sarah nodded slowly. She felt no joy in the number, no satisfaction, only a grim determination to see this through to the end. Prepare the next wave of attacks, she ordered. We're going to teach the Empire what it means to threaten humanity, and we're going to make sure they never forget the lesson. On the far side of the galaxy, Emperor Cal Seth received the reports from his military commanders. The human counter-offensive had struck 37 systems simultaneously. The casualties were catastrophic. The economic damage would take years to repair, and the psychological impact on the Empire's citizens was immeasurable. For the first time in 1,000 years, the Galactic Empire was afraid, not of an external threat, not of a rival empire or an alien invasion. They were afraid of a single species from a single world who'd refused to be conquered. The Emperor summoned his council and spoke a truth that changed the balance of power in the galaxy. We have awakened something that should have been left alone. The humans are no longer prey, they are predators, and we have taught them that we are vulnerable. In the silence that followed, every member of the council understood what that meant. The galaxy had a new apex predator, and its name was humanity. 5 years had passed since the failed invasion of Earth, and the Galactic Empire was dying. Not quickly, not dramatically, but slowly and steadily, like a great beast bleeding from 1,000 small wounds. Emperor Cal Seth stood in the throne room, his crystalline form flickering with patterns that showed his distress, and looked at the 2 military officers before him. General Vax Thor stood as he always had, straight and dignified despite his age and scars. Next to him, Admiral Zorkath looked like a broken shadow of the warrior he'd once been. The admiral had aged badly in 5 years. His armor was scarred and dented from a dozen battles against human forces. His eyes held a haunted look that never quite went away. Report, the Emperor commanded, his voice resonating through the chamber. Vax Thor stepped forward and activated a holographic display. The map of the Galactic Empire appeared, but it looked different than it had 5 years ago. Whole sectors were marked in red, indicating systems under attack or lost to rebellion. Yellow markers showed systems where Imperial control was contested. The amount of solid blue representing secure Imperial territory had shrunk considerably. The situation continues to deteriorate, Vax Thor said bluntly. In the 5 years since we withdrew from Earth, humanity has conducted over 200 separate military operations against Imperial targets. They've destroyed 15 major military installations, crippled our supply network in the outer sectors, and provided weapons and training to 17 different rebel groups within the Empire. He zoomed the map to show specific systems. The Catharan homeworld is still recovering from the biological attack. Their birth rate has dropped by 40%. The Zaxian colonies have lost 3 worlds entirely, radiation levels making them uninhabitable. And just last month, humans destroyed the shipyards at Deneb 4, setting back our naval construction by at least 2 years. How many ships do they have now? The Emperor asked, Conservative estimates suggest at least 300 vessels capable of interstellar travel. Vaxthor replied, but the real number is likely higher. They hide their construction facilities, move them constantly, and use stealth technology they derived from captured Imperial equipment. We can't track them all. 300 ships against our thousands, Zorkath said quietly. And yet they're winning. They're not trying to conquer us, Vaxthor explained. They're trying to bleed us. Every attack costs us resources, both material and political. Every human raid inspires another rebellion within the Empire. They've turned themselves into a symbol of resistance, proof that the Empire can be fought and defeated. The Emperor's crystalline form pulsed with anger. Then we send a larger fleet. We mobilize the entire Imperial Navy and finish what we started. With respect, Emperor, Vaxthor said carefully. That's exactly what the humans want us to do. He pulled up new data intelligence reports that made grim reading. Human agents have infiltrated several Imperial worlds. They've made contact with dissident groups, provided them with weapons, taught them tactics. If we pull our fleets to attack Earth, these groups will rise up. We'll lose more worlds to rebellion than we could possibly gain by conquering one human planet. So we do nothing, the Emperor demanded. We allow this to continue. We negotiate, Vaxthor said. And the word fell into the chamber like a stone. Silence. The very concept of the Galactic Empire negotiating with a species they'd tried to conquer was unthinkable. It showed weakness. It suggested that humanity was an equal power, which was impossible, except it wasn't impossible anymore. The humans have made it clear, Vaxthor continued, that they'll accept peace, but only on their terms. They want full recognition of Earth's sovereignty, reparations for the damage we caused, and a 50-light-year neutral zone around their system, that no Imperial ship may enter. Unacceptable, Zorkath said, speaking for the first time. We can't agree to such terms. It would make us look weak. We are weak, Vaxthor said bluntly, at least in relation to humanity. And every day we pretend otherwise, we grow weaker. Our economy is strained from constant military operations. Our citizens are afraid. Our subject species are questioning our authority. How long before the Empire collapses entirely? Before anyone could respond, an aide rushed into the chamber. The breach of protocol was so severe that guards actually raised their weapons before recognizing the aide as one of the Emperor's own staff. Forgive me, Emperor, the aide said breathless, but we've just received word. A human fleet has appeared in the capital system. The chamber erupted in chaos. Shouts, orders, demands for information. The Emperor's form blazed with light as his emotions overwhelmed his control. How many ships? Vaxthor demanded, his voice cutting through the noise. 20, General. They appeared at the edge of the system and have made no aggressive moves. They're broadcasting a request to speak with Imperial leadership. It's a trick, Zorkath said. A distraction while they attack somewhere else. Or Vaxthor said slowly, they're here to negotiate. They could have attacked 20 ships, could do significant damage before we stop them. But they're asking to talk. The Emperor made his decision. Bring them to the orbital platform, under guard and with weapons locked on them at all times. If they make any hostile move, destroy them. And if they don't, Vaxthor asked, then we listen to what they have to say. 3 hours later, General Vaxthor stood in the diplomatic reception hall, watching as the human delegation arrived. He'd never seen living humans before, only recordings and intelligence reports. Now, seeing them in person, he understood something he'd missed before. They looked fragile. They were small compared to most galactic species, their bodies soft and unarmored. They moved with a grace that came from lower gravity, and they breathed the station's atmosphere without assistance, though he knew it was richer in oxygen than most species prefer. But their eyes held something that made Vaxthor's instincts scream danger. These were predator eyes, intelligent and calculating. The human delegation was led by a woman who introduced herself as Admiral Yuki Tanaka. Vaxthor recognized the name. She'd commanded the human defense fleet in the first battle, the one who'd sent her ship on a suicide run into an Imperial cruiser. You survived, Vaxthor said, surprised. I evacuated first, Admiral Tanaka replied with a slight smile. I'm not suicidal, General, just committed. There's a difference. She was joined by 5 others, a military officer, who watched everything with suspicious eyes, a civilian introduced as Earth's Secretary of Defense, a scientist who immediately started examining the station's architecture with fascination, and 2 others whose roles weren't specified. They were escorted to a conference room, where the Emperor waited along with his full council. The room was designed to intimidate, with the Emperor's crystalline form positioned above the others, literally looking down on anyone who entered. Admiral Tanaka looked around the room, nodded once as if confirming something to herself, and then sat down at the table without waiting for permission. "Thank you for agreeing to meet with us," she said. "I know this must be difficult. No one likes admitting they made a mistake." "You are quite bold," the Emperor said, his voice cold, "for someone whose planet we could sterilize from orbit." "You could try," Tanaka replied calmly, "but it would be the last thing your empire ever did. We've positioned weapons throughout your territory, stealth ships in orbit around every major world, automated systems that will activate if we don't send regular override codes. If Earth dies, hundreds of Imperial worlds die with it." The council chamber erupted in outrage, but Tanaka continued speaking, her voice never rising. "We call it mutually assured destruction. It's an old concept for us, one we're very familiar with. You can't destroy us without destroying yourselves. So we're going to sit here as civilized beings and negotiate a peace that allows both of us to survive." "This is extortion," one council member shouted. "This is reality," Tanaka corrected. "You invaded our home, you killed millions of our people, you started a war that you thought would be easy. You were wrong. Now we're offering you a way out that doesn't end with both our civilizations in ruins." Emperor Kal Seth studied the human admiral for a long moment. "What are your terms?" Tanaka pulled up a holographic display. "Full recognition of Earth and all its colonies as a sovereign nation, reparations for the damage you caused to be paid over 50 years, a neutral zone of 50 light-years around Earth, that Imperial ships may not enter without permission, and a formal apology from this council for the invasion." "Unacceptable," Zorkath said. "The reparations alone would bankrupt the Empire. Then you shouldn't have started a war you couldn't afford to lose." Tanaka replied. She looked directly at Zorkath, and the admiral flinched from her gaze. "You commanded the invasion fleet, didn't you? How many of your own people died? How many families received notification that their loved ones were killed trying to conquer a world that didn't want to be conquered?" Zorkath didn't answer. "I lost my ship," Tanaka continued, her voice softening slightly. "I lost friends, colleagues, people I'd known for years, and I know you lost people too. This war has cost both of us too much. It's time to end it." General Vax Thor spoke up. "What guarantees do we have that humanity will honor this peace?" "The same guarantee you've always had," Tanaka said. "We keep our promises. When we said we'd defend Earth to the last human, we meant it. When we say we'll leave you alone if you leave us alone, we mean that too." She stood and walked to the viewport, looking out at the stars. "We didn't want this war. We wanted to explore, to learn, to find our place among the stars. You forced us to become warriors, but we don't want to be warriors forever. We want to go back to building, creating, discovering. Give us peace, and we'll give you the same." The Emperor considered this for a long moment. "General Vax Thor, you tried to warn us. You told us to leave humanity alone. We didn't listen. What's your recommendation now?" Vax Thor didn't hesitate. "Accept their terms. We can't win this war, we can only lose it slowly or quickly. This way we lose with honor and preserve what remains of the Empire." "Admiral Zorkath?" The Admiral looked at Admiral Tanaka, at the humans who defeated him, humiliated him, and taught him what true warfare looked like. "I agree with General Vax Thor," he said. "Accept the term." The Emperor's crystalline form pulsed with complex patterns, processing the decision. Then for the first time in the 1,000-year history of the Galactic Empire, an Emperor bowed to a species they'd tried to conquer. "We accept your terms," Emperor Kal Seth said. "The Empire recognizes Earth's sovereignty. We will pay reparations. We will respect your borders, and we offer our formal apology for the invasion." The council chamber was silent. History had just changed direction. Admiral Tanaka bowed in return. "Thank you, Emperor. I hope this is the beginning of a better relationship between our peoples." "As do I," the Emperor replied. "But tell me, Admiral, what will humanity do now? You've defeated the greatest empire in the galaxy. What comes next for your species?" Tanaka smiled, and it was a smile that sent chills through everyone who saw it. "We explore, we build, we learn, and we make sure that no one ever threatens Earth again." She looked around the room, making eye contact with each council member. "We're taking our place among the stars, not as subjects, not as servants, but as equals, and if anyone threatens that, they'll learn the same lesson you did." The negotiations took 3 more days to finalize. Treaties were signed, borders were established, and the first human embassy on an alien world was opened in the imperial capital. The galaxy watched with a mixture of fear and fascination, as humanity, the species that had been targeted for conquest, became a recognized power. On the final night before the human delegation left, General Vax Thor found Admiral Tanaka standing alone on an observation deck, looking at the stars. "May I join you?" he asked. "Of course, General." They stood in silence for a moment, Two warriors who understood each other better than most. I tried to warn them, Vax Thor said quietly. I told them what you were, what you could become. I know, Tanaka replied. I read your report. It was the most respectful thing anyone's ever done for us. You saw what we were capable of, and instead of trying to exploit it, you tried to prevent a war. I failed. You tried. That matters. Tanaka turned to look at him. What will you do now, General? The Empire is changing. The old ways are ending. I'll retire, Vax Thor. I'm too old for these new times. But before I do, I want to know something. What would you have done if we hadn't accepted your terms? Tanaka was quiet for a long moment. Then she answered honestly, we would have burned your empire to the ground. Every world, every station, we wouldn't have stopped until the Galactic Empire was a memory, and then we would have mourned all the deaths, ours and yours, and carried that weight for the rest of our existence. You mean that? Every word. Vax Thor felt a chill run through his body. You really did declare war on death itself, didn't you? We declared war on anyone who threatens our freedom, Tanaka corrected. Death is just one enemy among many, but it's the last enemy, and we'll defeat it too, eventually. I believe you, Vax Thor said, and I think that terrifies me more than anything else. Tanaka smiled. Good. Fear is healthy. It keeps you cautious. It keeps you respectful. It keeps you alive. She offered her hand, a human gesture of respect and farewell. Vax Thor took it, feeling how small and fragile her hand was in his, and yet knowing the strength it represented. May we never meet in battle, General. May we never need to, Admiral. The human delegation left the next day, their ships vanishing into faster-than-light travel, heading back to Earth. As they departed, Vax Thor stood on the observation deck and watched them go. The galaxy had changed. Humanity had proven that the Empire wasn't invincible, that a determined species could fight and win against overwhelming odds. Other species would take note. Rebellions would grow. The old order would crack and eventually shatter. But perhaps that wasn't a bad thing. Perhaps the Empire had become too comfortable, too arrogant, too certain of its own superiority. Perhaps humanity, with their violence and their determination, and their refusal to accept defeat, was exactly what the galaxy needed. On Earth, in a ceremony attended by billions via broadcast, Admiral Tanaka stood before the Secretary General and received the highest honor humanity could bestow, the Medal of Terra, given only to those who'd ensured the survival of the human species. You went to the heart of the enemy, the Secretary General said, and you brought back peace. The war is over, humanity is free, and the galaxy knows our name. The crowd erupted in cheers, but Tanaka's thoughts were elsewhere. She thought about the soldiers who died defending Earth. She thought about the civilians killed in the bombardment. She thought about the Imperials who died too, soldiers following orders, caught up in a war they didn't start, so many dead on both sides, so much loss, but also so much gain. Humanity had earned its place among the stars through blood and fire. They'd proven they couldn't be conquered, wouldn't be enslaved, refused to surrender. The galaxy had learned what happened when you threatened Earth, and the galaxy would never forget. In the years that followed, humanity spread across the stars. They established colonies, made contact with other species, and slowly, carefully began to build a new civilization. They remained armed, remained vigilant, but they also remained hopeful. The Galactic Empire survived, though in a diminished form. Other species gained independence. Inspired by humanity's example, the old order gave way to something new, something more dynamic. And on every human ship, in every colony, in every home on Earth, the same message was taught to each new generation. We stand for freedom, we fight for peace, and we will never ever surrender. The galaxy had learned its lesson. Humanity wasn't prey. They weren't subject. They weren't a species to be trifled with. They were the apex predators that the galaxy hadn't recognized until it was too late, and they were here to stay. In his retirement, General Vax Thor wrote a book about his experiences. The final chapter was titled The Warning No One Heeded. It became required reading at every military academy in what remained of the Empire. The last paragraph was simple and direct. If you encounter humanity in your travels, show them respect, offer them friendship, treat them as equals, because if you make them your enemy, they will teach you the same lesson they taught us, and by the time you learn it, it will be too late to matter. Admiral Zerketh never wrote about his experiences. He never spoke of the war publicly. But late at night in his private quarters, he would sometimes watch recordings of the first battle of the human ships fighting against impossible odds, of crews singing as they died. And he would remember a young human girl with burns across her body telling him that his people had no idea what war was. She had been right. They had learned, and the cost of that education had nearly destroyed everything they'd built. The galaxy moved forward, changed forever by a species that refused to be conquered. Humanity took its place among the stars, not as conquerors, not as slaves, but as free people who'd earned their freedom through sacrifice and determination. And somewhere in the darkness between the stars, on every human ship and every human world, they sang their songs. Songs of defiance, of hope, of determination. Songs that spoke of a species that had looked at the greatest empire in the galaxy and said simply and clearly no. That single word had changed everything, and the galaxy would never be the same again.